So what exactly do the Houthis want, and what are the prospects for peace talks? Questions for Yemen expert Dr. Elisabeth Kendall of Oxford University.
At the beginning of this war in 2015, what they wanted really was power without responsibility. They weren't able to get that. They've actually found themselves with the reins of power, and they have not done a great job of governing since then. What they want now probably is a way out of this, but a way in which they can still retain honour, in which they can claim some kind of success to their constituents who've put up with it for the last 3.5 years. But I don't think ultimately they want to govern Yemen.
So what needs to happen if these talks are going to get started?
Well, what needs to happen first is what we've already got, which is significant United States pressure to bring the warring parties to the table, and an ultimatum, 30 days. We also need to have some very smart negotiations going on in the background. I'm sure that's happening with the UN envoy Martin Griffiths, but we want to avoid a repeat of what happened in September when the Geneva talks were stillborn because the Houthis did not turn up. There needs to be now a real will on both sides with all the little details hammered out in advance so that the talks can actually go ahead without anyone losing face again.
Is it more likely that the Houthis will turn up this time? I mean, what sort of assurances are they going to be looking for?
I imagine they'll be looking for the same kinds of assurances as previously, but more specifically, an assurance that they will be allowed to return to Yemen after the talks. That was one of their last-minute demands in September for the Geneva talks. And indeed, it wasn't so unreasonable of them, because after the 2016 talks in Kuwait failed, they were prevented from returning into Yemen for 3 months. So I imagine that that kind of detail is being discussed and ironed out in the background.
Do you think the Saudi-led coalition is also looking for a way out of this conflict now?
I imagine that it is, but a way out which enables it to declare victory. Look at it from a Saudi perspective. None of its war aims are being delivered. It's tried to prevent Yemen from fragmenting. It's failed. Yemen is fragmenting. It's tried to contain the influence of Iran. It's failed. Iranian influence is increasing. It's tried to restore the government of so-called legitimate President Hadi. It's failed. He's not even inside Yemen. And at the same time, it's financially crippling for Saudi Arabia and reputationally disastrous. So I imagine that Saudi would dearly like to find a way out.
Does that mean you're feeling more optimistic at this stage than perhaps in previous months?
I always try to be a little optimistic. I think that this time, given the lessons that will have been learnt from the failed September talks, given that the US is on side, given that we have such an energetic UN envoy, and given that both sides in this war, both main sides, there are many other sides, are going to be exhausted, I feel that there's a chance.
That was Dr. Elisabeth Kendall, a Yemen expert at Oxford University. You're listening to Newshour from the BBC World Service.